if you're saying it's never happened, and Nye and I are seeing videos of sex ed teachers being confronted because the 10-year-old was taught about fisting, you're going to have to explain those videos to us when you say it's never happening, because that's an overgeneralization. Is it rampant and widespread? I don't know, but I do know there are some questionable books that were banned in elementary school for good reasons. And the last point I heard you make, that conservatives are intent in shaming women about sex. That's not accurate.
That's not what I said.
Can you remind me what you said? Because I wouldn't want to stop you.
Criminalizing sex.
So that's even worse than shaming them. And we're watching a woman brag about having 100 sexual partners online, thinking that's a good idea, with another one's goal to have 1,000. Like, these are not healthy examples of sexual activity in our society, and we should maybe not criminalize them, but maybe actually seek psychiatric care for them, because that's fucked up. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, I don't think you've been listening. I don't think anybody's been hearing my position. I think you need to recraft good sex education, right? I think we agree on that. And I think the same kind of way that you think I'm generalizing, I think you're doing the same thing. You're saying, oh, well, there's this one video I saw, and that must be what everybody is doing. That's ridiculous, right? There are school districts who are doing it well. There are school districts who are not doing it well. We should study who's doing it well and what the impacts and what the effects are. And we should have a good sex education system that prepares people to engage in physical relationships with each other. You're not hearing me at all. We agree that there should be certain content taught and certain content not taught.
How about marriage prep?
Absolutely not.
Oh, really? They have to be able to contracept.
Wait, what did you say?
Absolutely
I'm sorry,
not.
Michaela, what did you say? Marriage what? Marriage prep, you said?
Yeah, marriage prep.
And Caleb said no. Why no to marriage prep?
Because I don't think that's a matter for the public education system to get involved with.
Yeah, but having sterilized.
That's a question for adults when they want to get married, to consult their the people who are close to them, their friends, their family. I just don't think that
but
the government or the education system.
Sex is for everybody.
Long-term commitment, no. Casual sex, yes.
No, again, you're not. Again, you're strawmanning my position. I didn't say casual sex. I said. Look, you racist misogynist. Listen, you're not hearing me. You're not hearing me. You're not hearing me.
Homonyms already.
Wait, you're calling Monica a misogynist?
Oh, absolutely.
Can you explain?
You're an ideologue.
Can you just
She's against women.
You're an ideologue.
Against women. She is a woman who. Do you think she's against herself?
I think she negotiates herself out of rights. Yeah.
The right to kill the unborn?
The right to control your body.
I exercised my rights quite confidently during COVID when they wanted me to take an experimental vaccine. I think
that's fine. I have no problem with that. If you want to endanger your life, that's fine.
Okay,
So wait a minute. Misogynist, racist, and what? What would be that added ad hominem, according to
I mean, I haven't heard you say Christian nationalist stuff, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Caleb, do you believe you should have the right to, snort cocaine and shoot heroin?
Yeah.
Is there anything that you may want to ingest or do to your body that you think should be illegal?
Not really.
So
okay, and so then can I just maybe the next logical step? Would you say that anybody who would advocate any restriction whatsoever on bodily sovereignty is therefore anti either human or anti their own sex?
I think it depends what the state interest is in making it illegal, right? That has to be clearly articulated. And if it's some kind of national health issue, I think I'm more inclined to accept the legal definitions. If it's some kind of like social control issue based on some kind of narrowly drawn morality, I'm not inclined to accept the state's argument.
Wouldn't you say killing people would be like a national health issue?
I don't think that it's killing legally significant considered people.
You don't think people that are will be born in a few months are significant?
No. I think people who are born have legal rights. People who are not born don't have.
Let's just talk about the social whatever and the public health whatever. Like, isn't it good for society to have people, especially while we're in population decline? Like you brought
it's
that.
Good if people, it's good to have good people who are going to be good parents and who are equipped to be to provide for their families and for their children. That's what's a good thing.
Does abortion increase breast cancer rates?
I don't know.
I guess what I would say is it's one thing to say you want to defend the abortion rights, but to say someone's a misogynist just because they may have a reason to want to, and I support the abortion rights too, but I wouldn't call someone a misogynist who wants those types of restrictions. I think that's like a weird.
That's fine. That's fine. Perhaps for this particular discussion, I went out of bounds, but I've heard Monica say enough times things about women, things about minorities. She is a racist, misogynist bigot. But I won't bring it in here.
Oh, great. Because it's not the Monica show. All right. So the fact that I want women to understand how powerful they are, how much control they have over themselves, and their ability to say no makes me a misogynist. Who knew?
That's not what makes you a misogynist. That's not what makes you a... You are so... Methinks the lady doth protest too much. You're such a snowflake.
I don't remember calling you a sanctimonious prick, but you are.
Call me whatever you want. You're a stranger on the internet. You think I give a shit what you think about me?
That rise in intonation makes me think so.
I think you're filled with hubris. I think you are overly sensitive to the point of JB had a room the other day. Who's most sensitive? You're most sensitive. The Karens of the world, the demonic.
Karen. You're gonna call us Karens.
Oh, let me get my white women's here. They're basically at my feet.
Name calling.
Isn't Karen a misogynistic term?
Yeah.
Would you like to speak to the manager?
We're talking about pro-life, pro-choice. Caleb is believing that allowing a woman to kill a fetus is not homicide, it's not murder. It's her body, her choice, despite it being a separate entity and not her body at all, just in her body. It's okay.
You're misrepresenting my view.
You get fetus. It's
You're misrepresenting my view. I would call it terminating a pregnancy, not murdering a child, right? We would use different terms.
Are children
right?
pregnancies?
Well, they're not children. They're not.
What is a child?
A child somebody
is
who's born.
An offspring.
Look, listen, I'm not saying that terminating a pregnancy is an easy decision. I've had it in my family enough to understand, right? These are real losses. These are real things. And I don't minimize that, right? I don't think that people take these decisions willy-nilly. But I don't want
a lot of people do. Maybe you didn't.
A lot of people do, and you're interrupting me again. A lot of people do, and you're interrupting me again.
Do you think 1 million a year are extreme circumstances?
I don't get to be involved in people's private medical decisions.
But statistics, and you don't want to be involved in statistics.
I don't want to be involved in people's private medical decisions. That's not my business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And neither is their financial situation.
I think it's
not my
because,
business.
I know, because you probably had a personal situation that was very difficult. So you
Wait, hold on.
Why would you say that?
Hold on. Can't, hold on. Let's all
That's totally inappropriate. That's totally inappropriate.
Hold on. Let's all try to make this less personal. We're talking about a topic that, unless somebody right now is making a decision about whether keeping a baby or terminating a baby, this shouldn't be a personal conversation. We could talk about our views on it, and we could get out our thoughts on why we believe the law should state this, that, or the other thing, and we could even bifurcate the law between morality. I don't think everything that is wrong should have a law that prevents it. I think there's some things that can be dealt with socially. If something is if something is going to harm people, right? But it's a choice that people make to harm themselves. We do it all the time with processed food. We do it with alcohol. We do it with cigarettes. We do it with drugs. We do it with prescription drugs. We do it with a lot of things that cause us harm. And so I guess the question is when somebody makes the decision to terminate a life, which should be a very serious issue, it should not be done just as another form of birth control. I think the crux of this conversation can go in all these different directions about the legal argument, the moral argument, the medical argument, scientific argument, and part of it is, when does life begin? Caleb's been pretty clear that he says that life begins at conception, but rights don't begin until birth. I guess my pushback to that would be, how could a life not have rights? And how could if we are calling it a life then at conception, then we'd have to concede that terminating it is ending a life. And then there's a big moral question there. But I do think that when it comes to the legal question, you do have to balance that against bodily autonomy. And so it's a complicated issue. It's a very complicated.
Just to mention, Ayn Rand's position is exactly what I said. Life begins at conception, rights begin at birth.
Yeah. What is the 14th Amendment? What does the 14th Amendment protect?
Well, the 14th Amendment has to do with full faith and credit across state lines. It has to do with, many people read into the 14th Amendment privacy, although it's not explicit there, but people read it in. I don't know what else we could look up the 14th Amendment.
Yeah, I just looked on ChatGPT, and they said that's what protects personhood, persons.
Right, but again, that's a legal definition. In other words, I think that,
right, but you use the word person.
You so
That's what got me on to you.
Listen. There are the Kayla. Chill your tits, lady.
That's horrible for you to speak that way.
It's horrible for you to just
grab
continue.
Your balls or so. I mean, please.
I say 5 words and you have to.
No, you're gross.
Have you guys shared?
Okay, that's fine.
Have you guys shared space before that you're so personal like this?
I've never had this. I've never had this with me. I've never had this with Michaela before. It's surprising.
That's right. I think I've listened. You just right now. You are just setting me off.
Okay, great. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I have a different. I'm sorry that I have a different view on a complicated issue.
Condescending attitude.
I'm sorry that I have a different view on this complicated issue, and that you can't handle a different view. Sorry about that.
What set me off is that I thought, oh my God, he's using the word person. Wow. And then that some people don't have rights. And then I looked up ChatGPT very quickly. Personhood, what protects, but whatever. 14th Amendment, okay? Innocent. The innocent persons are protected by the 14th Amendment.
What we need to separate out is the colloquial usage of person
Well, you
And
should
we
have
need
used
to-
colloquial.
Can you stop interrupting? Will you please stop interrupting?
Well, I'm just going back and forth quickly with you. You should.
No, you're not. You can't go back.
Lecture us.
No, I want to finish a sentence.
Okay, go ahead.
Jesus Christ.
Go ahead.
For such a devout Catholic, you're acting very un-Jesus-like.
That's right.
Jesus.
You've set me off. We get angry too, us devout Catholics.
Wait, Michaela,
Yeah.
you're a devout Catholic, but is your position that conception life does not begin at conception?
No, it does. In person,
Okay, I
begins
got you.
there too. And when he agreed with that, I thought, oh wow.
Okay, Caleb.
There need to be legal definitions of these things. Just because I say person, right, or life, that doesn't mean that legally the definition is right. And I've been hesitating to bring in the biblical view, which Michaela is going to have wrong, right? But that's something that informs my position, which is that in the Bible, unborn life does not have the same legal standing as born life. And that is, for me, a very significant contribution to how I can have come up with my position.
Well, that's a Protestant way of looking at things. Catholics have the church
Actually, no.
also besides the Bible.
All right, let me.
Actually, no. I'm not using just the Bible.
Caleb, let me jump in for one quick second because I have a question for Michaela, if that's all right. Michaela, so I understand where you stand on this whole issue, but I'm curious. Let's say there's no abortions and people have babies that they can't take care of. Are you okay with same-sex marriages, adopting these children?
No, there's plenty of heterosexual couples that are waiting in line to adopt kids. The problem is it's very expensive. So regular middle class or lower class people can't afford it.
What about single parents?
They're waiting in line.
What about single parents?
No, I think it should go first to couples, married couples.
Shouldn't it
That's
go
the
to people
proper
who
place for
shouldn't
children to
it
grow.
shouldn't it go to people who are qualified to be good parents according to the agency?
Oh, the government is going to decide. At least they should be married.
Yeah, you want the government to be just big enough to fit into people's beds.
Okay, there we go. We're going to get into the whole. Yeah, you want zero. You want zero sort of common sense morality. You want to hook all morality to your morality.
Morality is not objective.
Your morality is it? You know, like
Morality is not Michaela. Morality is not objective, and I'm not godless. I believe in God.
Okay. How would you never mind. There's common sense, traditional morality that you want to upend.
No, not at all. I want to protect individual rights. Why don't you want to protect individual rights?
You don't care about the rights of the unborn people.
I have legally defined the categories, and what your critique is my legal differentiation between unborn and born. You don't like that differentiation.
Well, yours is the way the state sees it right now.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is not how the state sees it.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Different states.
Not at all.
Different
Not at all.
states now.
Not at all. Not at all. And please be quiet.
Ooh,
I'm trying to get out of thought.
go for
You're
it.
you're being triggered is your problem. You need to control that.
Go for it.
Control yourself.
Go for it.
Your problem is with my making the line, the born and unborn. I think that's a useful delineation because it's very clear, right? And it doesn't, as Mojo was saying before, it doesn't have to rely on the shifting target of viability, and it doesn't even have to rely on when I define life beginning, right? It's outside of those realms of influence. So I think it's a useful way to do it. Now, you have a critique on that, which is totally fine. You can have your position, right? But don't call my position somehow ignoring common sense, which is not that common, or some kind of morality that you've defined as the traditional morality, but lots of other cultures don't define as the traditional morality, and morality shifts and changes over
Yeah, well,
time.
we're in this
We know
culture.
that.
We're in this culture, and you want to shift this, and you have your types have shifted our culture's morality.
My types.
Yep. And Rand types.
Okay, wait, now I got. Oh, wait. Hold on. Yeah,
I'm not an animal.
No, forget Amran. I'm sorry, you mentioned it. Lady, let's hear New York.
Michaela, why are I'm trying to understand, because I feel like you and I probably have a similar position, but the way that you're communicating this here, it almost makes me want to retreat from your position.
I just have had it. I'm sort of fed up. I'm sorry. I'll back up.
But use your words. What is it you're exactly fed up with?
His attitude.
Well, hold on. He all he did was voice his thoughts on this issue.
Okay, maybe we can hear somebody else's pro-choice attitude.
But hold on. You decided because you disagreed with him in the use of the word personhood that it was okay to interrupt them, cut him off, and declare that your position was common sense and his was not. And so I would just challenge you to have an open mind in these conversations to at least hear what the person has to say.
I've been hearing him. I agreed with him on personhood. What I was talking about with common sense was, singles and gays being able to adopt kids. That's what I was saying is common. Common sense morality would favor married couples.
Because gay people are less moral. Do you think gay people are less moral than heterosexuals?
No, I'm saying that's the best place for a child to grow up is within a marriage of a man and woman, a family of man and woman, especially, boys.
Why?
Why? You're going to ask me why. It's common sense.
Why is it common sense? Explain it.
Oh, you can't explain common sense.
Well, actually, if it was common sense, it would be easily explained.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be best? Wouldn't it be best for the child to be in a home with however many loving parents they're going to have, so that they're going to be raised in a compassionate? You're interrupting again.
Oh God!
Again, you're doing it.
I speak quickly, and you like to go on, and I get impatient.
I like to finish a sentence before somebody comments, so that they can understand what I'm saying accurately.
Callum, Michaela, respectfully, please let him land his plane. Go ahead, Callum.
Jesus. I think it's best for children who are going to be, for any children, if they're born to biological parents or if they're adopted, to be in loving, compassionate, kind environments. There's all kinds. Not everybody's equipped to be a parent, so I wouldn't preference heterosexual couples just because they're heterosexual couples. I would preference people who are showing that they want to raise children in productive, loving environments. That's the important thing for protecting a child, not whether you have a man and a woman, right? Which is some kind of arbitrary, standard that doesn't really tell you what kind of parents they're going to be.
Well, it would be at least a man and a woman. There would be other things too, loving, etc., like you said. But boys need fathers to become men. They need to emulate. They need to have a relationship with a man. Girls, etc. That's a part of human development, to have parents of the opposite of two sexes. Okay, it's part of human development.
It doesn't have to be parents. You can build relationships with all kinds of significant adults that are not your parents, that provide.
Okay.
You can't help
yourself.
Need at least you can't help yourself, can you? You cannot help yourself.
You need at least
You can't help yourself. You can't let me finish a sentence. You cannot help yourself.
You need at least that.
You cannot help yourself, can you?
I am used to a different kind of conversation.
If we were in person, it would go very differently. But
no, it wouldn't. It would go just like this.
Can I jump in here now? Well, you guys.
Fucking A, dude.
Thank you. What are you yelling at me for? I just want to jump in.
No, not you, JB. You're fine.
I've listened since this room was open. I really haven't interjected, but Roger brought up a couple of points that I've been thinking on. The demonization of sex in society in America. It's so true, Roger. But on the flip side of that, it's just my opinion. I think these kids are overly sexualized because of social media and the internet. There's no guardrails, and I get it. Listen, I'm pretty much a free speech absolutist. Say what you want, I really don't give a fuck. But when there's no guardrails on these mechanisms, and let's keep it real, Roger. You and I are different than what's going on in this world. We're involved in our kids' lives. A lot of parents right now. Listen, we heard of latchkey kids when we were growing up. Well, these are internet kids. They're being raised by the internet. Parents are thriving to be friends and not parents. So I think until there's some kind of guardrails around the internet, it's just going to get worse. Thank you for listening, people.
Well, but let's get more specific. What kind of guardrail are you looking for?
Dude, I don't know, man. Anybody under 18, their social media should be screened. They should only be allowed certain things on social media.
But should the guardrail be imposed by the parents or by the government?
Listen, I agree. Like I said, parents want to be friends. They don't want to be parents. So if it's such a problem in society, this over-sexualization of children, which I believe it is, then the government may have to step in. But then now again, it's the First Amendment again. Do we just let them go have a cornucopia of porn and all this other sexualization? I mean, dude, there's 18-year-olds on OnlyFans making millions of dollars. There's other young ladies out there see that. They're like, I want to do that. Look, I'm not judging anybody's morals. Do what you want, right? But I think if we're going to complain about the problem, then we need to come up with a solution, and that would be one of my solutions.
I think the interesting thing is that the more access that these kids have gotten to, whether it's pornography or just any type of content that would stimulate them in that way, how do we square that with the fact that these kids are having less and less sex than any generation before them? They've been, maybe the overexposure's made it uninteresting to them. I would argue that part of it is that they're not socialized very well. So there's got to be some sort of courting system to be able to get the attention of the opposite sex. And I think that because people have their nose in their phone all goddamn day, they're no longer able to be able to even put a sentence together to talk to the opposite sex. And so maybe that's a big part of it. But I just think it's interesting that we're worried about the over-sexualization, but they're not having sex. I mean, I think what's developing is a very unhealthy relationship with sex where, people are more comfortable turning to things like pornography, OnlyFans, shit like that, instead of engaging in it firsthand. It's almost as if people have decided to be spectators instead of participators, which is very interesting considering the participation in sex is where the magic's at.
Well, let me ask you a question. Well, let me just make a statement, then I'm going to ask you a question, if that's all right. My statement is this. We talk about sex education, right? I'm in New York. I don't even know if they teach that in schools anymore, to be honest with you. But we're never going to get a unilateral sex education program that's going to cover all the states, right? So New York is going to teach differently than Texas. Texas is going to teach differently than Wyoming or whatever. So I believe there needs to be more sex education. I just don't know what that looks like. And my question was this: do you feel that I believe porn is these kids are getting addicted to porn? How do we fix that problem? How do we get them back into, like you said, the courting process?
Well, this is going to be an old-fashioned, thing to say, but look, and I say this as somebody that doesn't have a God club, but I do believe in God. I think that the more that we've turned away from God, I think the more that we've turned away from traditional family values, we're dancing on a landmine. And when people say that, hey, I think the world would be a better place if they were to adhere to these more traditional family values, and perhaps lean into what is a behavior that would be pleasing to a creator, that sort of thing. That gets laughed at, it gets scoffed at, and I'm certainly not saying that we should legislate that. But I think I look at people that that adhere to a code, and nobody's perfect at doing it, but at least if you had a code, that would work. And I think one of the things that we're doing is, in this rejection of God and then the rejection of family values, we're essentially saying, well, anything should go. And I'm torn between, I think that people should make their own personal decisions, but I also believe that we can look at the behaviors of others and see what seems to lead to better outcomes. And I'd like to see this just play out socially rather than through the government. I don't know. I think people should think about who they're mating with. I think they should take that very serious. I don't think sex should be as recreational as it is today. I think that if you're going to have sex, your partner should be somebody that you think, unless they're post-menopause, they should be someone that A, it's consensual, and B, you should believe that they would make a good parent, because that's how babies are made. And you should probably have some alignment in your worldview about how to raise children. I think that's another problem, because if you don't have the same alignment, then you have these kids, and you have one parent that wants to do it one way, another parent wants to do it another way, puts a lot of stress on a relationship, confuses kids on what they should do. And then at a certain point, you lose influence with your children, and their peer group becomes the people that they're relying on to get information on, what influences their behavior. So you have to do a lot of work in the beginning to put, to plant those seeds of expectations on behavior and helping young people to see the world in a particular way. Because once their peer group takes over, you've lost control. 0 to 4 years old is very, very important. But I would say all the way through preteen is extremely important. Once they become teenagers, you have very little influence over them, and until after they start making a lot of mistakes. And then once they make those mistakes, then if they did have wise parents, that's when they tend to come back and say, "Oh man, I should have listened to my parent."
Thank you. That was great.
Hey, Caleb, I've been listening to you this morning. Good morning. I would challenge your definition or criteria starting point of personhood, right? I think that's why people were pushing back earlier, because you're like, well, I could say it's a person, you're using person. But the reason that we use, specifically the word personhood is because that then is going to indicate who gets rights. So, like what are rights and who gets them? And I think that birth is a subjective. It's subjective. It's not subjective. It's what is the word I'm looking for? Arbitrary. It's an arbitrary starting point for when when a human being becomes a human being. It's just a geographic location starter, like inside, outside. I think things are going to change when technology changes. So, I think that you might want to, if you want to be logically consistent anyway, right?
I hear you. I don't think arbitrary is the same as random. You're right, it's arbitrary because I've selected for it. But there are reasons for why I've selected for that. It's not a random choice.
There's a difference in definition between arbitrary and random.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Arbitrary is when I choose. Random is not really a choice. Random is like things that happen to you, right? And I'm not choosing the delineation of birth as a random, right? It's not random. And all choice, all right? It would be different in different stages of pregnancy.
Yeah, not to be hung up on semantics, but my quick Google search of arbitrary says it's defined as based on random choice or personal whim, rather than any reason or system. But go ahead and use words as you.
I am going to use words as I will, and I am just like you're going to use words as I will, like for your new god, ChatGPT. That's fine if you wanted to abandon your old god.
Search, not ChatGPT.
So I'm responding to B. I'm responding to B right now.
Okay. B, and just check the Discord under business.
Yeah, check your Discord. Check your Discord.
I did. I asked Rock how's.
Yeah, great. Are you finished yet? I'm speaking with B. Thank you.
You really have mental issues. Do you have a therapist?
Taught me.
Because you had been.
Do you have a husband to service you so that you're not so high strung?
Okay.
This is
Wait. Yeah, why y'all going in on Caleb?
Go smoke a bowl. Yeah.
I don't do drugs.
Chill out. And I was responding to B. B, I don't think arbitrary and random are the same thing.
Did you know the ability of a give and take conversation where multiple people interject randomly at will without being considered rude? You're a problem, Caleb.
You're a problem, Caleb.
So just to respond to Caleb.
It almost sounded just like your regular one. Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate your definition, look up, Monica. Thank you, because that's what arbitrary means. You might have a reason for choosing, but it still lacks an objective foundation, so that could be applied consistently. Something could be applied consistently to logic. So even if you choose birth for a reason, the question isn't whether you had a reason. The question is whether that reason is morally relevant and universally applicable in a consistent way that you could apply to logic. That's why it's so important. You have the 3 laws of logic, right? They would be everything. Logic would completely just dissolve upon itself if there wasn't consistency and non-arbitrary points. You have the objective points. So
yeah, I don't believe in that kind of objectivity. I just don't think that's the way the world works. And I do have moral reasons for my arbitrary selection, right? I do have, right? Because I think it would be immoral child the same as an unborn child. They're just different. I think that's an immoral stance to consider them of the same legal status.
Okay, well, remove the moral aspect, okay? Let's just look at the objective, logical standpoint of where you're coming from. You're taking an arbitrary point in that when a human life begins, and you're just saying, okay, I'm just gonna randomly put it at 9 months, or as soon as it comes out of the vagina.
Again, I'm sorry to interrupt. That's a misrepresentation of my view that I've been very clear and consistent about. That's a misrepresentation.
I know that that's what you feel, but no matter what you say, it is arbitrary. You're using it randomly, and it's not the starting point of when human life begins. And like I said, all it is different. Hold on. For someone who hates getting cut off, I'm saying.
When does life begin?
Yeah, B, I've been very clear in my position. You're conflating the when life begins with the when rights begin. And I choose to sever them. You might say that's arbitrary, that's fine. But I think it's equally as arbitrary to say that life and rights begin at the same time. There's nothing necessarily logical about that statement.
Is it Khalif or Kalev? How do you pronounce your name? Kalev. Could you repeat it? I'm new to the room, or new to you guys, some of you guys. And good morning, good evening, and good night for whoever's here. Could you repeat your stance?
My stance is basically like this. Life begins at conception. Rights begin at birth. And that permits both a moral, right? It permits me to say that life is life, where I'm not going to say it's like a bunch of cells, right? And I think that in the relationship between parents and their unborn children, it's really a real life in their lived experience, right? And I don't want to take that away. I think that's important to maintain. But I also think that rights, we have to have a distinction between the rights of a born person and the rights of an unborn person. It's silly. It's just silly to think that they are of the same legal status. And I wouldn't put the full complement of rights on it that an unborn child has them. They are completely dependent on their mother. They are completely dependent on uteruses, right? I just don't understand what it means to grant rights to somebody who's unborn.
Okay, I mean, I can understand where you're coming from to a certain standpoint, because certain rights come with age. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, that's a great point. Not even all born people have the same rights.
Like the right to vote is 18 in most states, I believe all 50. So I can see those things. But the right to life with conception, and I agree with you on conception, that's when it begins, in my opinion. It's just me. So, okay. I just wanna hear, so I can hear both sides of arguments or whatever. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. For sure.
Wait, hold on. KP, that was you. I'm sorry, I was working in the background. That's you who said, the last speaker, you believe life. Did I hear you correctly? Life begins at conception.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. And I like conversations like this to listen, to learn about other points of view. Caleb's point of view was certainly intriguing. When do rights begin for the unborn, and then once they're born? But I'm with you, KP. I believe the life and rights begin at conception, right? So, but I know the world is shifting into a different perspective. We have divided the nation. Some folks, I'll say this in land, some folks believe, life begins after the child, the unborn is born, after the fetus squeezes out of the cookie cat, right? Some folks believe it's not life at conception. It's very interesting how we've evolved to this divide. And
good morning. I haven't heard from you in a long time. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you, man. I'm glad you're having a great day.
Someone said earlier, I'm gonna stop wishing people to have a great day. I'm gonna start wishing them have the day you deserve and let karma figure it out. I think that's fun.
I like that, actually. Have the day you deserve, let karma figure it out. Monica, I love it. I will be using that. I will be adding that to my vocabulary. Okay? So in case you hear me repeating it in these clubhouse streets, I heard it here.
That to me.
Monica, that's kind of a play off of Kill 'em all, let God sort them out. I like that one. That was pretty good.
I don't have time to be worried about other people's karma. I'll let that be decided by someone with higher authority.
Yeah, but you don't, you should not. For me, I don't let your sugar and diabetes affect me. That's the way I approach life. When people say stupid things, I don't let that crap affect me. I just look at you like diabetes and heart attacks and diseases. And you good, son. You can say what you want. You keep your sugar and high blood pressure over there. Cool. Don't let it affect you. Don't do it. Because stupid people always going to say stupid shit at stupid times in stupid places. That's what they do.
Accurate. There's a good book I'm reading now. You might like it. Mel Robbins has a book called Let Down. And the title is much longer than that. But it's like when people are jerks, like let them be jerks and move on with your day.
Monica, I'm going to tell you, this is the issue I have with you. You know how much money I spent in books talking to you?
You're welcome.
Shoot. I got to put myself on a budget with this woman's books. I love you and appreciate it for you.
I was going to say something. There is something, that is different about when a person is inside another person whose rights prevail. And that's when the life of the mother is being threatened by the life of the child inside of her, like in, what do they call it, when in the tubes, when the child implants in the tubes. I'm just blanking on what that is called.
That's an ectopic pregnancy.
Ectopic, right. And so there's no way out of that except to remove the child or kill the child with methotrexate or whatever.
Right.
So that's where one person's rights exceed the others.
Well, they haven't figured out how to save the fetus, so it's not really. I don't consider it abortion. I consider it a medical procedure to save the mom, because the mom's life takes precedent over the fetus always. It's another argument that the pro-choice people can't hear.
Not in Texas. Not in Texas. It doesn't.
Yes.
That's ectopic you can't grow anyway, so
not in Alabama.
It's just going to be
Ectopic?
Yes,
they don't allow ectopic?
Those hospitals and doctors are facing penalties because they misunderstood.
They keep women on life support to carry a baby.
Hold on a second.
More women on life support to carry a baby.
Not with ectopic pregnancy.
You cannot carry a child in a ectopic. The fallopian tube cannot do it.
Is different. I'm responding to Monica's point.
And I just got out of work. I just got out the hospital, so let's go for it.
I'm responding to Monica's point that the woman's life always takes precedence. Not in all states. Not in all reproductive freedom legislation. Some states keep women in comas if they're pregnant because they won't abort, because they won't terminate the pregnancy. That's not the woman's life taking precedence. Not at all.
Wait, hold on to that point. Have you guys heard about the case of Adriana Smith? Okay, if you haven't, go Google her, Adriana Smith. For the past several months, she has been a hot topic. Adriana Smith was a nurse in Georgia, in Atlanta. Well, I don't know if she was in Georgia. I had to pull up the article. She fell into a coma. She had a blood clot earlier this year. Fell into a coma. They put her on life support because she was pregnant. They refused to. Her family wanted to take her off life support. The hospital refused because of Georgia's abortion ban, and they forced this woman to give birth. She just had the baby last week, I think, via emergency C-section. The child was born. She gave birth to a 1-pound baby boy. The baby's father, her boyfriend, and the family for months wanted to take her off life support, but they could not because of the Georgia abortion ban, and it was a hot topic. A lot of protests, just local leaders, pro-abortionists, pro-lifers. They came together locally and spoke, the national media who picked up on it, interviewed the parents because they called the experience torture, right? And they could not take their daughter off life support until she finally gave birth. She was 10 weeks pregnant. She was declared brain dead in February. I'm just reading the notes here on NBC. She was 10 weeks pregnant when she had emergency. They finally gave her emergency C-section. She was declared brain dead in February. So to Caleb's point, look up the case of Adriana Smith.
It probably is exactly what he was referencing. How is the baby?
The parents said right now it's like a waiting game to see. I think the baby was born okay, and by okay I mean he was 1 pound 13 ounces. He was put in the NICU. The mother said he's expected to be okay. He's just fighting. We just want our prayers for him. That's the statement that she gave recently as a week ago. So I don't know any updates now about the baby, but she's quoted as saying the baby was okay. He's fighting, so they're just waiting, since he was born so fragile and 1 pound, right?
We're going to keep the baby.
It sounds like they're going to keep the baby, but even before the child was born, the parents, the family was speaking out. And while they didn't say directly they were going to keep the child or give the child away, they were speaking as if they were prepared to take the child. But they were worried about what medical issues the baby would be born with, and of course that comes with high hospital bills. So they were worried about the financial toll it would take on the family. So they were already stressed out, not only because their daughter, the parents, especially the mom has been really speaking out. Her daughter was, I believe, in her early 30s, fell into this coma, and the state, they had to fight the state, and because of laws, they couldn't do anything about it. So they were really worried about how the child would be born. They were really worried about his future if he was born with, deformities or major health issues. But she said last week, in an interview, so far he's okay. So I guess we just have to wait for further updates. And in the interview that I read, I don't know what statement she has given to other outlets, but she did not, the mother didn't indicate one way or the other whether they want to keep the child or give the child up. But I get the impression the family is prepared to take care of the child.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned it, I just looked it up. I got a deep dive in that story. Thank you for the info. And you said NICU, so I know what you do.
And very good day to you guys.
Hello, Ro.
Hey, no.
Oh my God, you didn't change the account. How many times I got to keep adding you, Ro? Jeez.
What's up, KP?
What's going on, my brother from the land from down out there?
We're doing all right over here. And it's been a good day.
Nice. How's the temperature out there?
Yeah, it's fucking cold, man. It's in the middle of winter. I think it's actually just hitting the middle of winter now. Look, I gotta be honest, it's not all that bad compared to other places. We don't have snow in the city here, so it doesn't get to crazy low weather temperatures. So it's really not as bad. We'll probably have about half a dozen days where it's like, you know what, I can't be fucked going out. I'm gonna stay at home, and that'll be fine. So it ain't too bad.
Okay. Well, you can come here. You're gonna sweat your balls off here.
Whereabouts are you?
Michigan.
Michigan, okay.
It's ridiculous here now.
Hot. Like, what temperatures to get to?
Sometimes we hit over 100, and because we're around the Great Lakes, so it's sweltering hot.
Really?
Yes. Like, we were one of those states like Louisiana that the humidity can get so high you can just pass out and die because your body can't absorb too much humidity. You would just pass out that.
So, okay, let's have a look. So temperature-wise, so 100 Celsius to Fahrenheit. Okay, no, sorry. Fahrenheit to Celsius is what we're talking about. Okay. So, okay, that's not too bad. So 100 Fahrenheit is about 38 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, y'all got that system over there.
Okay, well, that's about 37. So let me tell you that, let's say 120 Fahrenheit. No, 120 is probably a little bit high. 110. Yeah, the hottest we probably get here is about 110 Fahrenheit.
Okay.
Which is 43 degrees, which is...
And what's hot? For the human body, you can only absorb so much humidity. And when it's that humid, your body was shut down. You're going to be, what my guy's saying in Florida, graveyard dead.
Yeah, vapor.
You're done. You're done. And it's one of those years, it's humid.
So how's the conversation on abortion?
We're trying to get people to be logically consistent, but because they're
conversation died. Make it past 24.
Okay.
Do you like logic, Ro? Like logic, like you know, like the whole laws of logic, categories, the whole thing.
I tend to be able to try and think logically, but I don't know much about the subject. What are the laws of logic?
Just like the necessary laws of logic that, you know, require any type of consistent methodology for anything to be applied, right? Like all of the, you know, excluded middle, non-contradiction, that type of thing. We're discussing whether we're removing all type of morality, so we don't have to worry about morality. We're removing all type of legality. Don't worry about that. So we're not appealing to any type of moral standard. We're not appealing to any type of legal standard. But just looking at something logically, we're wondering how someone, which is not logical to say, we have individuals, and it's not, you know, I think a lot of people would agree with this stance, that if because you can't argue science, that's the thing. So we have like this contradiction where people want to admit that human life begins at conception because
yeah. What do you mean you cannot argue with science? That in itself is not logical.
True. the current
Sorry, I'm just being logical
state
about it.
of what no, that's true. Touche.
Okay.
What we know as far as like today, you know, like you can't how do I say this?
English.
So like whenever you, first of all, science, right? I think that there's enough science. Like we would get into like it's like scientific fact that human life begins at conception, right? It's very specifically defined that's where specifically human life begins. So you could debate it if you'd like, but then we're just going to get into this. We're going to be debating more so on semantics than descriptive facts about reality. So whatever we're talking about, the idea of conception and life in relation, you have to be able to, you would have to meaningfully change one of those two definitions in order for that not to be the case. So if you want to debate that, no problem. But it's you know, and that's something that I want to do because I don't think that it's reasonable at this point. So we believe that human life begins at conception. So if we concede that, because you know that's overwhelming, which people have agreed to in this room.
Yeah,
that human life begins at conception. Go ahead.
But here's something that you said that I just want to push back on because it's just untrue. When people talk about science and what science proves, in an empirical sense, science never proves anything. In fact, the idea of science is to falsify with evidence, and so we never have proof through science.
Yeah, that's correct. I want to say something about logic, right? Logic works given the premise. So I just want to challenge the idea that there's some kind of like pure, unadulterated logic. You can question the premise, right? And then you can have your logic flow differently from the premise. But once you have a premise, the rules of logic flow from that. So I disagree that there's some kind of, as Michaela was saying before, common sense or these sort of like agreed upon things, and therefore the logical argument is something. Not everybody agrees on those premises.
Yeah, there are also different types of logic.
Well, what I'm saying is, so first of all, Roger, yes, I agree with you for the most part. So but I mean, like, does anyone want to argue that human life doesn't begin at conception here? Does anyone on this stage not believe that? Or do we want to go back and forth?
I could argue it. I don't believe it, but I could argue that position.
Right. You don't believe it for a reason. Why is that?
Because I think it's messier. Because I think the viability conversation, if that's where we're going to say where life begins, and I would imagine that would be part of the life doesn't begin at conception argument or set of arguments. That's a moving target, and I think that doesn't actually give us clear enough definitions. So that's why I don't believe it. It's not because of some kind of like moral fact that I believe it. It's because it's cleaner.
Not even like an objective, like I'm talking about just like objective facts, like,
Nope.
No, interesting.
Nope. It's a pragmatic way to hold all the things that I hold, commitments that I have. It's a cleaner way to hold those commitments without having to say, like, it's a fact that life begins at conception. I don't think that's a fact. Nobody can say that's a fact because sperm and eggs are alive also, right? How far do you go? You have to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah, and let's talk about where some of those lines can be. So you've got conception, and that's where the sperm fertilizes the egg. But wouldn't you be able to make an argument that the sperm and the egg are also alive? And so that would make an argument that life begins before conception. And then once you form the zygote, then there's the process of it dividing, right, rapidly. Then there's the embryonic stage where the organs form, and then you have your stage where viability kicks in. My question is since we can't pinpoint it, because you can make a very logical argument for those that say that life begins at conception, which is what I would typically say. Like that's kind of that's what I've accepted. But if somebody wanted to make the argument of is sperm alive, I would have to argue yes. And so if that's the case, then perhaps this is a lot messier than anybody is really giving credit for.
So, well, I disagree with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, one quick one. Look, I don't. It'd be fair to be able to say that sperm, could be alive and an egg could be alive as well. But a sperm by itself cannot create a new life. But a sperm and an egg together will combine a new life.
Yeah, it's not that the sperm and the egg aren't alive. They are alive, but the life that we're talking about ending in abortion doesn't occur until conception. Exactly, Christina.
An individual human being.
Right.
Yeah.
Where each of us started. There was a very specific scientific point.
Hold on. But the human being that is conceived when the sperm fertilizes the egg also couldn't be alive if that forming a zygote, if the zygote doesn't rapidly divide itself. And so all of these stages are very important. The question is where does it begin? And how can you argue against the idea that if you didn't have a live sperm, you couldn't or a live egg? It's all about this regression of like, when did it actually begin? And you could say that when the chocolate met the peanut butter, that's when life begins. You could make that argument, but it's going to be very difficult to just say that that's the end of the story. Besides, even if you accept that that's when life begins, that certainly doesn't answer the fact of what policy should be enacted around, bodily autonomy and somebody's right. Do they have the right to terminate a pregnancy? And because from a legal standpoint, the standard has always been viability. So it doesn't even matter, where life begins. So again, this thing is so much more complicated than anybody on either side really wants.
Yeah, I just disagree. I think it's actually a lot more simpler. Like, each one of us on this stage, we began at a very specific point, and it's an objective point, and that was our conception, not a minute before. And with that, who Mojo was when Mojo became, and Bima became, and Ro and Christina. So I just moved from that starting point. I mean, I don't think that it's not complicated at all. And that is, in fact, the least arbitrary starting point, when both of those two sides of chromosomes came together to create this specific life that is Mojo. Mojo was not in existence before that very moment. Neither was Bima, neither was Ro, neither was Christina. And at that very specific moment, we became. And so that would be point one.
Yeah, but even if you got a consensus on that, that's still not enough to inform policy around.
Well, I think that would just be because. Oh, go ahead, Christina.
I was just going to say, yeah, because that's really two different questions. Like, when life begins for a certain being is one thing, but then, abortion is more of a social act or a cultural act or a decision that people make within the context of a legal system and a moral system and all of that. And that's just really separate from science. It's just a totally different question.
Yeah, and I think that's, you're right. But I think, Mojo, but I think it's more of just, it's subjectivity, and it's what we feel, and it's arbitrariness, and what we don't want to be responsible for, like the reality of things. Like there's a continuity of life. Like, you're born at the moment of conception, like that you're not like 9 months old. You don't begin when you come out of the uterus. Like, you began at conception, and you're not 1 year old, right? You're not like 1 year out of the womb. You began at conception, and when you die, that's the end of your life. The starting point is conception, and then you die. We actually live like there's just one long continuous line of development, and we separate it into years and months to make things easier for us to understand, like, the different stages of life, right? But if we were to be consistent, right, personhood, if you want to apply personhood, we would have to talk about, and that's the whole thing, like, and that's subjective. People, the other gentleman said that he doesn't believe that, he would concede that life begins at conception, but he doesn't believe that rights should begin at birth. But my argument is, I mean, like, that's arbitrary. It's just saying, because if he's to say that, if you're going to say, okay, let's not give rights until after birth. Okay, so what principle are you using to say that rights don't begin until birth. You're proposing that life exists, which he concedes to, but the rights aren't going to apply until a certain level of either dependency ends or a location changes. The baby's still going to be completely dependent, right? After the baby comes out, I mean, right? Maybe not completely dependent on that woman. Other people can then, take responsibility for the baby, but they're still going to be dependent. So if you're going to have to talk about dependency, why dependency disqualifies rights before birth but not after. And then location, like that's just it's another arbitrary point. Womb outside, you're creating. That's just it doesn't matter. Geographic location isn't going to matter because we talked about this earlier. Mojo science is going to change, and we're going to be able to hopefully, help Walter Block, right? The eviction. We'd be able to hopefully at a technological point in our future be able to take them out of the womb and then just allow them to, grow outside. But anyway, the idea is that whatever, you just have to be consistent and logically in order to make any type of sense of anything. It's more just about feels and what's socially convenient, because like, what would that mean for us if we all agree that human life, that all of us began at conception and that we all got rights beginning then? That would be a big burden, I think, to a lot of people. We're not ready to accept.
Yeah, I think the reason why this is such a difficult legal question is because you can make a very logical argument about a woman being able to make decisions about her body and what's in her body. Because if you don't own yourself, then we've got a real big problem. Then the conversation goes, okay, well, but what about the independent life that is growing inside her? Should that have rights? And you can make an equally logical argument that the life growing inside her should have rights as well. And so this is where it becomes complicated, because you do have very good claims of what is logical, what should be legal, it's not clear cut. I've never heard anybody make a clear cut argument about why their position, is just empirically correct. And because it's difficult, my preference is that we do allow the states to decide these things rather than the federal government. That way, you have 50 different chances to align with what people find more palatable in terms of, this difficult decision. If you make one decision on this divided issue, one rule for everyone, you're really gonna violate, half the people's rights. And so I think dividing it by states and letting the states make the decisions is the best thing to do. I don't know why people cry about that part of it.
Look, what you say actually makes a lot of sense as well. At least people have the options, right? If they, instead of making a blanket decision for an entire people, for an entire nation, at least, breaking it down, at least each state, or even city for that matter, may have different cultures that are attached to those locations and those people. Having those local people make those decisions, I think we've come down to a position of saying, well, let's have a look at the legal definition. That will help give us a guidance. It leans away from philosophical or religious views, and it just makes things maybe just a little bit easier.
But why should the state be the unit of decision? Like you just mentioned, sometimes cities or maybe counties. Why shouldn't it just be an individual decision? It doesn't seem to me like it's. So the state does have a vested interest in life before birth. And I think that's why the viability thing comes in. Like, I think the Roe decision anyway was all about the state's interest in this new potential human being coming into being, right? So this is a strange situation. Is super, super complicated. There's this being that's been conceived, and it's just a bunch of cells, and then at some point it becomes recognizable as like a thing, and then it becomes a fetus, and then at some point it's almost a baby, right? It could be born and survive. So it's changing over time. It is not a static thing. And I think, historically, this has been recognized by women. There's a phase in the pregnancy called, what's it called when the baby stirs? Quickening. It's called quickening, when you can feel the baby. And like at that point, like through Catholic history and religious history and, just human history, that quickening point, it's alive, it's a baby, it's coming, right? Before that, it's just not really considered a being per se, just traditionally. And Roe was really based on that. Like there's a certain point in the first trimester when, listen, it's not really the state's interest at that point. It's the woman. It's not really anything yet. And then the second trimester, it's getting closer. There's some reasons why we still can permit ending it, but more and more it's becoming a citizen almost. And then the third trimester, that's it. Like you can't really touch it unless it's going to actually kill the woman to have this baby or harm her health in some way that's really serious. The state's interest kicks in. You can no longer abort that, and who would anyway? That's terrible. You'd only do that if you absolutely had to at that point. So I think the Roe decision was actually really practical, so there's that argument. But then also just like I really don't see why having the state as the unit to decide this decision for people is the right unit, even more than the country was, or the county, or the city, or the household. Like, why not just go down to each household gets to decide? There's really no logic in other people telling me what to do. I don't think.
Well, that leads down to a slippery slope because you've got like religious.
It leads down the slope to individual decisions about their own health care. That's the slope it leads down to, is individual decisions about their own body. Well, I'm just telling you why it's a slippery slope to exactly the thing I'm proposing.
He didn't even get to make his argument. Can you let him make his argument?
Jesus Christ. Yeah, that leads down to slippery slope because we've got a lot of religious people that are embedded within our government, right? And so, if we just leave the states up to just, to make these types of laws, then it's going to allow the floodgates to occur, where we're just going to allow like these religious proponents to, impose their religious ideologies on the people through their state governments, right? And that's the problem, right? And I think that's really my biggest argument right there against what you're doing.
Well, how do the decision makers
with one another? Hey, Rose, I'll go after.
Yeah, okay, go. How do the people get to be able to make decisions? Who gets to be able to decide what the standards are? Where do you actually get to a point where you have an agreement in terms of values? And I think that comes down to community decisions, but I don't know how it works, right, per state or per county. I'm not familiar with it, but would you be suggesting that local, states shouldn't have their own laws at all, and it should just be across the board, or it should just be a state of lawlessness, or is it just pertaining to this particular issue?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that there needs to be a dividing line between religion and government, right? And I think that this is one of those areas where religion is utilizing their grasp on society to impose or enforce their ideologies onto people, right? There's this guise that, abortion isn't a theological stance, which it is. Wait,
hold on.
People want to deny it. People want to deny it.
No, hold on. I don't belong to any religion, and I'm pro-life. You can make your declaration that and I would agree that it's largely a religious argument, but the idea that it's exclusively a religious argument.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
Well, okay, then repeat what you said, because what you said translated to me hearing you say that. But go ahead and restate it if I've got your position wrong, because I can make a very logical argument that has nothing to do with religion about why aborting a child should be illegal. But
right, I just said that abortion is a theological ideology, which it is. Now, there are, anti-abortion. Now, there are people that are anti-abortion that are not theological. I'm just saying that this push for anti-abortion, this push to criminalize abortion itself is driven by theology, like especially here in the United States, where we're predominantly driven by Christianity. Right. That's what I was referring to. Yes, there are going to be people that are against abortion that are not religious. I agree, but I'm talking about the driving force here.
There's also hold on, Monica. Monica, hold on one second. There's also many people that are very religious that are pro-choice, but.
I can make the
right. I would agree with that.
Abortion is theologically driven too, but not by any God, I reckon.
Yeah, my biggest problem with this anti-abortion push is that people want to you guys talk about when does life start? I think all of that is just pointless rhetoric. The only real discussion to be had here, I think, in my opinion, is bodily autonomy and whether or not we want to grant special rights to infants that we don't extend to anybody else, which really is the main concern here.
So what about the bodily autonomy of the separate life that's growing inside the woman that has separate DNA and separate heartbeat?
Well, no, we're not talking about whether or not the infant has bodily autonomy, which I would agree it does. But does the infant have the right to use the mother's body against her will? So that's the discussion that needs to be had.
Well, actually, no, because what here's the problem, and this is why Walter Block is somebody that everybody should read, is that if you want to claim bodily autonomy, then what you can do is you could say, I want this fetus removed, but you shouldn't be able to terminate the life. The idea that and this is where technology eventually will save all of this and make this conversation completely moot, is with artificial womb technology, you can please both sides of this fence. Actually, the far left progressives will never fucking accept this, because when they say bodily autonomy, what some of them really mean is they truly desire to murder the baby. Like that is their goal, is to murder the baby. Because otherwise,
I reject that notion.
Well, no, you can reject it all you want, and that's your right to reject it. There's a lot of people. Yeah, no, there's a lot of people that reject a lot of things, but that doesn't make them right. Here's the issue.
I agree. I'm just saying that, what you're saying though is that
I wasn't finished saying what I was saying. I wasn't finished saying what I was saying. I wasn't finished saying what I was saying. You interrupted me. So let me make my point. Evictionism would allow you to remove the baby, evicting the fetus, which preserves the life, and then that way, if bodily autonomy is your argument, then boom, okay, you get to remove the fetus, you just don't get to kill it, and then that should satisfy the pro-lifers that say that you can't terminate this innocent life. And I will say this, if either side rejects the idea of evictionism, then their original premise of what they stood for was all a lie to begin with.
Okay, so to respond to what you're saying, I reject this notion that this fringe idea that you're presenting is the prominent issue at hand, which it's not. People that want to get an abortion generally are wanting to terminate the pregnancy. They no longer want to be pregnant. Right. And unfortunately, there's no feasible way at the moment to remove an unborn fetus or child, however you want to, label it, doesn't matter to me. Right. There's no feasible way to do that without the unborn dying. Right. And so the reason why they opt to ending the life in the womb before removal is to reduce the amount of suffering that's occurring to the infant, because removing the infant in the way it is right now, that would be an inhumane way of doing it, right? And so that's the reason why, in the vast majority of cases, that's the route that is taken. It's not because people are sadistic and they have this like desire wants to go in and murder this child. Like, that's just so fucking fringe, right? Like, that's just so unrealistic.
No, but clearly they've made choices. Let's walk it all the way through, right? So in the vast majority of cases, there's consensual sex. The vast majority is consensual sex leading to a pregnancy. That means somebody made the choice to have sex, knowing that sex can lead to pregnancy.
I don't see how that's relevant.
Well, I'll explain how it's relevant. And if you interrupt me again, you're not going to hear my pushback. A little bit of impulse control would help you out a lot in Clubhouse.
Well,
I don't know.
I agree. I just want to make sure that we're talking about points here. I know. I'm just want to make sure we're talking about points, point by point, instead of like monologuing. I want to address the things you're saying, but I don't want it to be like shotgun blast on multiple points of contention.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to give you some advice. Don't fucking interrupt me again. How about that? I think you're brand new to Clubhouse. You don't seem to understand the culture of how a conversation works, where one person speaks, they land, and then another person speaks. That's fine. But I want to make this point. You can't choose to terminate the life of the baby and think that, yes, that was my right to do that. When you had all of these choices prior to getting pregnant that you chose not to exercise. This idea of unwanted pregnancies or unexpected pregnancies is a completely bogus thing. People are being careless with their body, and then all of a sudden bodily autonomy becomes very important to them when they realize that, holy shit, Jim, the guy without a job, he's the guy. Well, you can use your little emojis all you want. The reality is there are many choices that a woman can make. The first mistake they make is who they choose to have sex with. Men make these same mistakes, by the way, the women that they choose to have sex with. If you're having sex with somebody that's not going to make a good parent, that's where the ideas start, where it's like, fuck, I can't have a baby. This guy doesn't have a fucking job. And the idea, if you're not ready to have a baby, you probably shouldn't be doing the things that cause you to get pregnant in the first place. And this is where accountability comes in, and this is why I don't think that we should. I don't think legal restrictions is the answer. I think we should just go back to shaming people. I think the wisest thing that we could do is if a woman that is unmarried gets pregnant, we should shame her. If she murders her baby vis-a-vis abortion, we should shame her. I think any. Okay, well, you don't like the monologue? I'll tell you what, you don't have to listen to it.
Roger, can I speak next, brother?
You can, but listen, nobody has to attend these rooms. If you find the things that people are talking about to be uninteresting, you can leave. That guy would have had a chance to speak, but unfortunately, he doesn't understand what a conversation is.
Dude, you know what I wonder? I've always wondered why this conversation has never happened. Why is it always black and fucking white? Why is it this thing can't happen, or yes, this thing can happen? Why can't we just regulate the shit, dude? Imagine a world where you would have to prove that you could get an abortion or that you should get an abortion. Let's say that you have proven that you've gotten raped. Abortion granted. Let's say that you prove, that you have some test and the kid is going to come out retarded or something like this. Abortion, granted. But if you're somebody who literally just got drunk one night and made a bad decision, sorry, abortion, rejected. Doesn't this make both sides happy? Isn't that a fucking, what do you call this? A compromise? Why is this never part of the conversation? It's always just whether you can do it or not, whether it's illegal or not. You have to prove that you should get a gun or something, right? You have to prove that this person isn't an illegal immigrant and you want to marry them for papers or whatever the case may be. Why can't this be the case for abortion, dude? Because like you said, man, these people who want to, preserve their bodily autonomy are saying that they never chose to do this in the first. Yes, you fucking did. You chose to do that the moment you chose to have a penis inside you. That was the decision to have a baby right fucking there. Anything after that is tough luck, toots. Straight up. Why can't we just prove that we should get abortions, get, proof of them or whatever, dude? You know what I mean?
Mojo, check your messages.
Yeah, I saw it. I get it. Fucking Edmund likes to stream rooms. Welcome, Edmund, to the room. Look, at this point with the anonymous feature, we're either going to have to say that we don't do rooms at all, or we just accept the fact that people like Edmund that don't care about consent are just going to do what he does. I mean, look, it is what it is. And by the way, if you don't want it streaming, just assume that every single room that you're in is streaming. We could probably find some solutions. We could start doing private rooms, and we could exclude them that way. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, like, he doesn't get many hits on his social media. For everyone that complains, I would imagine that like 90% of the views he gets on his YouTube is from people in these rooms that say Edmund's streaming, and then they go and they look at it. I mean, he does. It's not like he gets a lot of views. So I think we should stop giving him a lot of attention.
Dude, if you come on his social media platform and start talking to a room full of people, you should assume that this thing can be recorded, period. I don't see the issue.
Okay, so Danny, just to respond to your comments on abortion earlier. So I think I get what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense. There's some practical issues or concerns that come into play, though. For instance, your first point about rape. Wow. I mean, you can't always prove that you were raped. A lot of rapes don't even go reported, or, certainly getting evidence and going through court, even if you are successful, just takes a lot of time. And by the time that does occur, it's past the point of being able to have an abortion. It's just not practical. I agree with you that if you put a penis inside of you, you are asking to get pregnant, for sure. People should be on birth control. But I also have a lot of sympathy for the teenagers and the young people that don't have a lot of self-control. And I remember I was a teenager. I had a lot of desires, and kids just don't have the ability to control themselves always. Like some do. I grant you that there's special people out there that are exceptional, and maybe they're raised better than other kids or whatever. I don't know. But, there's a lot of people that do shit that they wish they hadn't done and they regret it. And, there is that strain of, well, you've made your bed, lie in it. But there's also the, a mistake shouldn't ruin your life. And, you should be able to maybe correct for some of the errors that you made. And also, I just, the idea that it's always better to have the baby, or like somehow that's the solution. Having a baby when the dad's not around and you don't have any money. I mean, mothers, regardless of social status, have less money than single women in general. Just statistically, they're more poor. And you can make a choice potentially that it's better that this life that you're potentially going to bring into the world would really fucking suck. If there's violence in your life, if there's drug abuse in your life, that child's life maybe wouldn't be something you would want to gift them. So I think there's some choices that come into play there. What else was I going to say? Oh yeah, the idea of the baby or the zygote or the young fetus, whatever it is, being taken out of the body and put into a machine to gestate, to become a human being. Like, when I think of that happening to me, it just makes me want to tear my hair out and break down and cry. Like, I can't even imagine you know, like a zygote being taken out of me and put into a machine and in that sterile environment and raised like that by strangers. Like I would never see that being. I mean, it's just, you know, I mean, giving up for adoption is really hard anyway, in and of itself, you know, so that would be like imposing adoption on every woman. I don't know. That sounds really heartbreaking to me, and just really sort of evil and dystopic. You know, I could see that becoming a dystopic novel about some future society where, you know, cellular matter is extracted from the female and it just becomes very clinical and cold and inhuman. It just sounds really wrong to me.
I hear you. Just another little note here. I don't understand why the term is always pro-life or whatever, what the other term is, dude. I give two fucks about life. I am a proponent of personal responsibility, and this is the only reason why I lean toward the, the idea of pro-life or whatever. For me, it isn't at all anything to do with murdering a life or preserving a life or whatever the case may be. To me, it's about the fact that if this thing isn't an available option to people, that they are just, it leads to more personal responsibility and actions that, you're very deliberate about. If you know that this thing is available to you, more than likely you're going to make the wrong decision. And for me, it's about not enabling these people, if this makes any sense. I couldn't give a fuck if you're out there murdering as many babies as you want. I give two fucks. All I care about is that these people are accountable and that they have some sort of sense of personal responsibility. And if you make a mistake, fucking pay for it. That's all that matters to me.
I wanted to talk with Christina. It used to be that when women got pregnant out of wedlock, they give the baby up to like what you call it.
For adoption or to an orphanage.
Well, yeah, but they'd go to homes, They'd go to homes, and yeah. And now the only women that don't abort when it's really inconvenient are the ones who are pro-life. But then they keep the baby, and then they have to, and then they're in terrible. A lot of them are in terrible circumstances, and then they have to give them up. After they've tried to keep the baby for a while, to foster parents and then adoption. So it would be nice if we had the tradition more. If you're gonna, if you're not in a good circumstance, but you're pro-life, you don't want to kill the child, to just automatically just give the child up at birth. Because there's so many people waiting they love to have newborn babies, not a baby, they do, go through foster care and all that, adopt foster kids, and then the kids have been really traumatized a lot of times. I have friends who have done that. And, it'd be great if we had a tradition of just giving the child up at birth. But it's just the sort of the pro-life ones who are attached to the child that keep the baby, and then it's just a terrible dichotomy or circumstance that has developed, I think we need a new tradition of, if you're pro-life that you just give the baby up at birth if you can't handle it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general what you're saying makes sense. If we had a culture where all the different choices were supported better, where there was more of a range of options for people to make the choices that were right for them, that sounds like an ideal situation. If you are free to, deal with your pregnancy, where there's a lot of different options available to you.
Yeah, it used to be, teenage girls. I have ones in my family, in an older generation that got pregnant, as teenagers, and bang, they just went off. They disappeared for a while, and then came back, and they had gone to, a place where the kids were adopted right after they're born. But, it's we have these options, I think, but they're not socially accepted,
Preferred abortion. Why can't you let your...
We couldn't hear that question. It kind of...
live even...
Or at least I'm curious.
So, Dr. James, I have that too here at University of Utah. There's a floating psychiatrist who deals with who's stationed in the family practice. It doesn't work. At least it doesn't work for me, because they don't spend enough time. They're not as thorough, and frankly, they're not the best psychiatrists. So what they're telling me is that the demand for mental health is so high among wealthy individuals. Psychiatrists don't feel the need to go the insurance route. They're just doing it fee for service, and they have a lot of patients for that. So that is the reason why psychiatric help is not available as readily, because the market is so impacted.
So the nuance here is that would be a psychiatrist, and the kind of what they had us doing for them. We were on the behavioral health side of things, so we were doing behavioral interventions. And then if once you had met with somebody, say like 6 times, and it seemed like either symptoms were not improving or in some cases getting worse, then we would have done a thorough kind of body of assessments and have enough medical, behavioral health history that we would then refer them to psychiatrists.